at 16 and buried by 21. That she left behind in Grady's crossing for good. She walked until her legs shook, then rode a stagecoach until her coin ran dry. By the time she stepped off near the Stillwater River, her boots were worn through at the toes and the sky was turning gold behind the mountains. She did not know the name of the place she had arrived in. She just knew she was not going back. The town was small, barely a town at all. A general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, and a livery. The kind of place where people looked you over slow, quiet. She walked past them all and kept going until she reached the edge of a pasture where the fence had half fallen. A lone rider was out there, working with a skittish chestnut colt, speaking to it low and steady like he was trying to talk it off a ledge. Nora stopped. She had seen men break horses before. Brutal, fast, loud. But this man wasn't doing that. He was crouched in the dirt, not even holding a rope, just letting the colt circle him, snorting and uncertain. Something about it made her chest tighten. The man looked up just for a second and their eyes met. He stood slowly, tall and lean, with sun-dark skin and dark blonde hair that curled at his collar. His eyes were the color of river rocks gray, unreadable. He tipped his hat but said nothing. She should have kept walking. Instead, her mouth moved. "Fence is broken," she said. "I know," he said. "You passing through?" "I might be," she said. "You hiring?" He studied her a moment. "You know horses?" "I know." Quiet. That made him nod. "Name's Zeke Calloway, Nora Deering." He looked at her hands, not her face. "You look like you could use work." "I could." He motioned her toward the barn. "I could use a hand with the fence and the animals. You'll sleep in the loft. I can pay you honest." She followed him without a word. He walked with a slight limp like an old wound still bothered him. She filed that away. Inside the barn, it smelled of hay and old wood. 2 horses watched her from their stalls, ears flicking. Zeke tossed her a hammer and pointed toward the broken rail out front. "Let's see what you can do." She spent the rest of that afternoon fixing fence alongside him. He did not talk much, but he watched her. Not in the way men used to, cold, weighing, cruel. This was different. He watched like he was trying to figure out if he could trust her. She did not blame him. She was doing the same. By supper time, her palms were blistered and her arms ached, but she had not felt this steady in years. Zeke handed her a tin plate of beans and cornbread and they sat outside by the fire. The sky was going purple. The horses grazed nearby. "You got family?" he asked. "No one worth mentioning," she said. He nodded. "Same." There was a long silence, not uncomfortable, just quiet. She let the heat from the fire warm her hands and leaned back to look at the stars. "You been out here long?" she asked. 2 years, got this place after. Well. After things went wrong in Kansas. She waited. He did not say more and she did not ask. "I won't lie to you," he said finally. "I've been carrying some things I do not know how to put down." She looked at him. "You do not have to, not all at once." He nodded again. Like he understood what that meant. They worked side by side every day after that. Fixed the barn roof. Built new stalls. Pulled weeds from the garden that had been left to die. She cooked, he chopped wood. They hardly spoke more than a few words at a time, but it was enough. His presence was steady, like the rhythm of hooves on dirt. She started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. One morning, while mending tack, she noticed him favoring his right leg more than usual. She walked over and crouched beside him. "You hurting?" "It comes and goes." "Let me look." He hesitated, then pulled up his trouser leg. The scar was jagged and deep, running from his knee down his calf. She touched the edge of it gently. He flinched but did not pull away. "Bullet?" "Yeah." "Lost my best friend that day." She looked up at him. "I am sorry, so am I." They stayed like that a moment, her hand on his leg, his eyes on her face. Something shifted then. She knew it. So did he. That night he brought her a blanket for the loft without saying anything. She tucked it around her knees and watched him walk back toward the house. Her throat felt tight and she did not know why. Weeks passed. The leaves turned gold and red. He taught her how to ride bareback, and she taught him how to make bread that did not taste like rocks. They laughed sometimes, quiet and quick, like they were both surprised by it. She found herself watching him when he worked, how his hands moved, how he always checked the gate latch twice. He started bringing her coffee in the morning in a chipped blue mug. One evening, after they finished branding a new calf, they sat on the barn steps, their shoulders close. "You ever think about starting over?" he asked. She nodded. "Every day," he exhaled slow. "I think I stopped believing it was possible until you showed up." She turned to him. "Zeke." He reached for her hand. His was rough, warm. "I do not want to mess this up, Nora, but if there is a chance, I want to try." Her heart beat so loud she could feel it in her throat. "I want to try too," she said. He leaned in slowly, careful. Their foreheads touched first, then his lips brushed hers like he was asking permission. She kissed him back, steady and sure. It was not desperate. It was not wild. It was the kind of kiss that said, "I see you, I trust you. I want to build something with you." When they pulled apart, they stayed close. Nora rested her head against his shoulder. "I left a harsh town behind," she whispered, "but maybe I found something better." Zeke wrapped his arm around her. "You did more than that," he said. "You found me." The first snow came early that year, a quiet dusting that softened the world before dawn. Nora stood at the edge of the paddock with Zeke's coat draped over her shoulders, her breath curling in the cold. The chestnut colt stepped careful through the frost, calmer now, though still wary. Zeke had said he'd come around in time, just needed someone patient to believe in him. Inside the barn, Zeke was oiling the harness straps by lantern light, his back turned as she stepped in behind him. "You should have woken me," she said. "I would have helped with feed." He didn't look up. "You were asleep. Thought you earned it after hauling timber all day." She leaned against the stall rail. "I don't like being idle." He ran the cloth along a buckle, voice low. "You're not. Just not everything needs doing all at once." She watched his hands, the measured way he worked through each strap. The barn smelled of saddle soap and hay, warm against the cold morning. "Zeke," she said after a pause. "What was your friend's name?" He let the cloth fall into the pail. "Wyatt," she nodded, waiting. "He was the one who got me out of the army, talked me into coming west. We were supposed to buy land together outside Abilene, raise cattle, never made it that far." He picked up a bridle, jaw tight. "Was it your decision to leave?" she asked. "I got him killed, Nora. We stayed too long near the Cimarron. I thought we were safe." He set the bridle down with more force than needed. "I was wrong." She closed the distance between them, silent until she was near enough to see where his knuckles had gone pale. "You were a soldier, not a prophet." He turned to her. "I keep thinking if I'd moved faster, if I hadn't trusted that trail. And if you'd gone a different way, maybe you'd be dead too," she said. "You can't walk forward if you're always looking back over your shoulder." His eyes searched hers, the quiet in them deeper than the cold outside. "I never told anyone that," he said. "You didn't have to," she said. "I already knew you carried it." He reached out then, thumb brushing the edge of her jaw. "You see things other folks pass over." She covered his hand with hers. "I see you." They didn't speak again until the sun crested the ridge and the frost on the fence rails began to melt. By then, the colt had wandered up to the edge of the paddock, nosing at Nora's boot. She crouched down slow, letting the animal sniff her sleeve. "He's trusting you more," Zeke said from behind her. "He's watching you," she said. "If you trust me, he thinks maybe he can too." Zeke didn't reply, but when she stood, he was smiling not wide, just enough to reach his eyes. Later, they rode out to the ridge with a sack of salt and a rifle slung across Zeke's saddle. The trail wound between stands of aspen already bare-limbed. From the ridge, the whole valley spread out below frosted pasture, the narrow thread of river, the dark smudge of town in the distance. "I used to think I'd be alone the rest of my life," he said without turning. She didn't speak, just let the wind carry his words away. "But then you showed up and you weren't afraid of the quiet. You didn't ask me to be anything more than what I was." She reached over and took his hand where it rested on the saddle horn. "I don't need more than that," she said. "I just need you to keep showing up." He brought her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "I will." That night, they moved her things from the loft to the cabin. He didn't say it was permanent, but he'd cleared a drawer for her, and when she unwrapped her mother's Bible, he made space for it on the shelf beside his father's compass. They slept in the same bed, not out of need, but because it was time. He didn't rush her. She didn't flinch. In the dark, his hand found hers between them. "You're safe here," he whispered. "I know," she said, and for the first time in years she believed it. The creek near the north pasture had frozen thin, just enough to catch the light like glass. Nora bent beside it, gathering the last of the cattail fluff for kindling, her breath rising in small puffs. The cold had deepened, and with it came the work of preparing the land and stock for the long freeze ahead. Every day held purpose now, tasks measured not in hours but in necessity. Zeke had gone into town before noon, taking a list she'd written out in careful script: salt pork, lamp oil, a spool of heavy thread. He didn't ask questions when she handed it to him, only nodded and pulled on his coat. It had taken weeks, but the rhythm between them had settled into something unspoken and solid. By the time his boots sounded on the porch again, dusk had gathered beneath the eaves. She opened the door before he could knock, and he stepped inside with his hat dusted in snow and a sack over his shoulder. "They had the thread," he said, shrugging off his coat, "but no pork left." "I can manage without," she said, taking the sack from him. He watched her for a moment, then set the bolt across the door. "Harlan Greevy was asking after you." She looked up from unpacking. "Why?" said he. "Remembered a girl with your walk from Grady's Crossing. Asked if you were kin." Her fingers paused on the spool. "He knew my uncle. Used to play poker out back of the saloon. He kept looking at me sideways after Uncle died. Thought I didn't notice." Zeke unlaced his boots slowly. "You want me to keep you out of town?" "No," she said. "I want to face the past when I'm ready, not before." He nodded once, then crossed to the stove and stirred the beans she'd left warming. "There's a winter gathering next week," he said. "Out past the Anders place. Bonfire, music, food, whole valley's invited." She turned, surprised. "You go to things like that?" "Haven't in a long while, but I thought maybe you'd like to." She studied his face. He wasn't asking out of obligation. This was something he'd chosen to offer, something that cost him something to do. "I'd like to," she said. "If you'll dance with me." His mouth twitched half a smile, rare and real. "I'll try." That night, the wind shook the shutters, and she lay awake with her arm across his chest, listening to its restless scrape. Zeke's breathing stayed steady beneath her palm, but she could feel the tension in his ribs. "You still think about Kansas?" she asked in the dark. "Not as much," he said. "Used to feel like I owed the weight of it. Now it's just part of what made me." She shifted closer. "I want to hear about the good parts sometime." He turned his head toward her. "Like what? Like how you learned to handle a horse without breaking it, or who taught you to mend saddle leather with a surgeon's hand?" "My mother," he said after a pause. "She could stitch anything: leather, skin, shirts. She used to say a man's worth could be measured by what he fixed instead of what he broke." Nora's throat tightened. "I'd have liked her." "She'd have liked you more." The next morning brought black ice and a shattered lantern outside the barn. One of the horses had spooked, kicked it off the hook, and the glass had scattered like stars across the snow. Zeke crouched to gather the shards, muttering under his breath. Nora brought a broom and swept the rest into a grain sack. "We'll need a new one before the gathering." "I'll ride out again tomorrow," he said, "or we can both go." She glanced at him. "You sure?" "I want people to see us," he said simply. She nodded. "Then we'll ride together." Later, while she mended a sleeve by firelight, he brought her a small bundle wrapped in worn cloth. She unfolded it slowly, a brooch, oval and brass, with a pressed flower under the glass. "It was my sister's," he said. "She passed when I was 15. I kept it in a box until now." She looked up. "You want me to have it?" "I want you to wear it to the gathering," he said. "If that's all right." She swallowed hard. "It is." They didn't speak again for the rest of the evening. The silence between them was full, not empty. She sat with her sewing, the brooch resting beside her, and Zeke whittled a new handle for the drawknife, each stroke sure and unhurried. The wind outside calmed. The fire burned low. And in the stillness of that small home, built with calloused hands and steadied hearts, something lasting took root, quiet as breath, strong as winter ground. The lantern light flickered as Nora fastened the brooch to the collar of her wool dress. Her reflection in the warped glass of the cupboard door showed a face she hadn't seen in years, not softened, exactly, but steadied. She hadn't worn anything but work clothes since leaving Grady's crossing, and the feel of a clean hemline against her calves made her pause. Zeke waited outside, holding the reins of the gray mare and the bay gelding. He had tied a strip of red calico around his neck, and though his jacket was patched and sun-bleached, he stood straight in it, as if tonight called for a kind of reverence. "You ready?" he asked, offering her a hand to mount. "I think so," she said, taking it. The ride to the Anders homestead followed the west ridge where the moon lit the snow in thin blue lines. They passed no one, though smoke curled from distant chimneys. The quiet between them held a low hum of anticipation. When they reached the clearing, torchlight burned in a ring around a wide circle of trampled snow. Women in shawls stood near trestle tables, handing out cider and fried cakes. Children darted between hay bales, red-cheeked and shrieking with laughter. Fiddlers tuned strings atop the flatbed of a wagon, the notes sharp in the cold air. Zeke tied the horses near the edge of the clearing and turned to her. "You don't have to dance if it don't feel right." "I want to," she said, "but you'll need to lead." "I'll do my best," he said. They stepped into the circle just as the music began. The dance was a simple reel, one Zeke seemed to know from muscle memory. Nora followed his movements, her hand in his, her boots crunching the snow in rhythm with the others. He didn't speak, but his grip was sure, and each time they turned, he looked at her like she was the only thing he could see. After the second song, she pulled him toward the cider table. Her breath came in clouds, her cheeks flushed from the cold and the movement. "I used to watch dances from the edge of the room," she said, taking the tin cup he handed her. "Never danced myself. My aunt said it wasn't proper." He sipped from his own cup. "She's still alive, she is. But she won't come looking for me, not after what she said when I left." He nodded once. "You can say it if you want." "She said I was no better than my mother," she said, her voice low, "that I'd end up ruined and alone." Zeke set his cup down. "You're not alone, Nora. I know that now," she said, "but it took leaving to understand I wasn't the one who needed fixing." He reached for her hand again, not for the dance, just to hold it. "You're not ruined. You're rebuilt." The third song began slower, with an ache in the strings that made her chest tighten. Zeke turned toward the fire and nodded toward a place where the flames didn't reach. "Walk with me." They stepped beyond the circle, where the night was darker and the noise dimmed behind them. The path led to a row of cottonwoods, bare-limbed and creaking in the breeze. "I saw the way you looked at the Anders boy," she said after a while. Zeke raised an eyebrow. "Which one?" "The youngest. He couldn't get his saddle cinched. You didn't laugh. Just showed him how to fix it without making him feel foolish." "I remember what it felt like to be that boy," he said. "No one ever showed me without a slap or a curse." They stopped beneath a tree that leaned toward the frozen creek. "You think you'll ever want to teach someone full-time?" she asked. He glanced at her. "You mean like a hand?" "I mean like a son." He didn't answer right away. His breath came slow and measured. "I used to think I wouldn't make a good father," he said. "Too much past. Too much I don't know how to say. But you'd show up," she said. "You'd teach quiet, you'd listen." "I'd try," he said. She reached up and touched his cheek. "I think you'd do more than try." The music behind them shifted again, something livelier now. Laughter lifted on the wind. "I brought something," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. She tilted her head. "What is it?" He pulled out a small tin box, the kind used for salve or tobacco. Inside was a folded scrap of paper with her name written in a hand he'd never shown her before, careful, deliberate. She opened it slowly. It was a deed, to the land behind the barn, her name beside his. "I want to build something permanent," he said. "A life, not just a season." Her eyes filled. "You're sure?" "I've been sure since the first time you didn't flinch when I was quiet," he said. "I want you beside me every day." She nodded, unable to speak. The cold air stung her tears, but she didn't care. He pulled her into his coat, held her there until her breath steadied. "We'll make it ours," she whispered. He kissed the top of her head. "We already have." Zeke set the last board in place over the frame, his breath visible in the morning chill. The cabin's new addition, a narrow room off the back, was nearly done. Nora stood a few feet away, holding the pail of nails, her scarf tucked beneath her chin. The frost hadn't lifted yet, and the sun threw long shadows across the pasture. She handed him another nail. "You'll have to show me how to chink the seams. I don't want it letting in wind by spring." Zeke took the nail, pressing it into place. "You're already doing more than most men I knew in Kansas could manage." "I'm not most men," she said, smiling faintly. "No," he said. "You're not." They worked until the sun crested over the ridge and the wind shifted warmer. After hammering the last nail, Zeke stepped down from the ladder and stretched, rolling his shoulder. Nora sat on the edge of the porch and opened the ledger she'd been keeping rows of neat, even script chronicling feed stores, fence repairs, and the names of the 3 calves born since November. She tapped the page with the back of her pencil. "Do you think we should take in another heifer next season if the Anders girl's willing to trade?" Zeke nodded. "If she's offering, it wouldn't hurt." "You've kept better track of the animals than I ever did." "I've had practice making small things stretch," she said, flipping the page. "Now I'd rather build something with enough margin to breathe." A low whistle cut across the pasture. Zeke looked up. A rider approached from the east trail, tall, broad-shouldered, with a wide-brimmed hat and a rifle across his saddle. Nora stood, her hand easing toward the porch rail where Zeke kept his shotgun. Zeke raised a hand. "It's all right, that's Cowboy. He used to ride for the Forest Service." "Does he know you?" "We ran timber up near Red Lodge for a season. Haven't seen him since." Cal dismounted at the gate, his coat dusted with pine needles. He nodded once at Nora, then turned to Zeke. "Been hearing talk down in White Bear," he said. "Surveyors coming through, railroads planning to push north in the spring." Zeke's brow furrowed. "How close?" "Too close. They'll follow the low ground, might cut straight through the south end of your pasture." Nora stepped closer. "Can they do that? Just take it?" Cal shook his head. "Not without buying it, but they'll try to talk you down, offer half what it's worth, say it's for progress." Zeke met Nora's eyes. "We won't sell." "No," she said. "We won't." Cal looked between them. "Then you'll need to mark your lines clean, get your title filed in Stillwater proper." "You've got the deed," Zeke nodded. "Signed and witnessed. Then take it in, before winter locks the road." After Cal rode off, Nora went inside and unwrapped the deed from the cloth she kept in the drawer where the brooch still lay. She ran her fingers over the ink. "We'll need to ride tomorrow." Zeke stood behind her, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "You sure you're ready to face them? They'll ask questions." "They can ask," she said. "But the answers are mine to give." They left at dawn the next day, riding into Stillwater with the deed tucked beneath Nora's coat. The clerk at the land office was a narrow-faced man with stiff cuffs and a faint ink stain on his collar. He barely looked up as Nora laid the paper on the counter. "This land's in both your names?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "You intend to homestead?" Zeke nodded. "We already are." The man stamped it without comment. The sound echoed in the quiet office. When they stepped outside, snow had begun to fall fine and steady. Nora reached for Zeke's hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Feels final," she said. "It's the beginning," he said. By the time they returned home, the sky had cleared. Smoke rose from the chimney and the horses trotted toward the fence, welcoming them with soft whickers. Nora dismounted slowly, her legs sore from the ride. Inside, the fire had burned low. She stirred the coals and added a log, watching the flame catch. Zeke came behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You warm enough?" She leaned back into him. "I am now." He kissed the space behind her ear and she tilted her head, eyes closing. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked. "I do." "And I'd like to marry you, Nora." She turned in his arms. "Not because it's expected," he said. "Not because of the land, because I love you." Because I want to spend every season with you, every winter, every thaw. She didn't speak right away. Her hand came to rest against his chest, fingers spreading over the worn flannel. I want that too, she said. They married in February, in the pasture beyond the barn, with snow still drifting in the fence corners and the ground hard beneath their boots. Zeke wore his father's coat. Nora wore a blue wool dress she'd sewn herself, the brass brooch pinned at her collar. Cowboy stood as witness. The Anders girl brought a basket of biscuits and a shawl stitched with pine boughs. They spoke their vows beneath a sky the color of pewter, with the horses grazing behind them and smoke rising from the chimney. Afterward, they shared a meal inside the cabin, the windows steaming with heat. Nora touched the place on Zeke's hand where a burned scar curved near his thumb. You never told me how that happened, she said. He picked up her hand and pressed his lips to her wrist. Lamp caught fire in the bunkhouse. I'd forgotten it until now. Funny what comes back, she said. Not funny, he said, but maybe necessary. That night they lay beneath the quilt she'd pieced through winter evenings, her head resting on his chest, his arm wrapped around her. I want children, she said quietly. He didn't move. You're sure? Not tomorrow. But someday, he exhaled slowly. I'd like that, and I want them to know this place, these hills. The way the light falls across the pasture in late day, they will. Will you teach them to ride if you teach them to mend fence? She smiled against him. Deal? Years passed, and the world beyond their valley kept shifting. The railroad came, but it turned west before reaching their land. The Anders girl married a man from Helena, and Cal Boyd retired to a cabin near the timberline.